Ironically, the bookkeepers that really have very little interaction with their clients, that becomes an easier acquisition because they're not super attached. But that's a terrible business practice, right? So
good one to buy, but
good one
bad one to do, because it's they can, if they're willing to be bought, they're willing to leave.
Exactly. Easy come, easy go.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Today's show is going to be a fun one. Our returning guest is the founder of Busy Bee Advisors, based in Sacramento, California. Melissa Broughton is back, and the beginning of our chat actually caught me off guard in a positive way. Let's take a listen. But you don't have any questions before we get started,
Nope.
I'm guessing?
I'm good, and I'm happy to go wherever the conversation takes us. You actually were an inspiration when we talked on the last podcast. So listeners, go back whenever that was. But whenever we talked on the last podcast, there was something that you had said to me that sparked such a, it was like that split in the road, and it sparked such a change for us. So maybe we'll have a chance to get into that.
Well, do tell. What was the change?
So one of the things that we had talked about on the last podcast that I got to be a guest of yours on was the crazy growth that we had experienced for our firm. And we, at one point, pre-COVID, we were servicing just around 325, I think. I was looking at our old rosters of clients, 325 bookkeeping clients. The secret sauce for us was doing reconciliations and providing financial reports for those smaller businesses. So businesses that are doing under $2 million a year in revenue that maybe don't have, more than 5 employees. Like they don't have that bookkeeper or that accounting person on staff, but they still need financials for a variety of reasons. And the growth that we were experiencing was just insane. I mean, it was, month after month, there was really no resistance. We would raise prices a little bit, still no resistance. We would raise prices a little bit more. And so it was kind of the change of, I needed to decide if we wanted to, potentially franchise or hire on just additional bookkeepers. And of course, the challenge with hiring on additional bookkeepers is that then my job really moved away from doing anything with clients and became all about managing bookkeepers. And so I tried that, and that was very interesting. We'll just say it felt like I had 25 kids at one point, and it was a lot. But I found that where my heart really was helping people who had, gravitated towards us, who had become bookkeepers with us, really helping them to start their own bookkeeping businesses. And I'm going, you have this book of business that you've built from working with us, take them, start your own business. And I'm telling people this, and I'm training them, and we're putting together training programs so they know what to do if this happens or if that happens. And in August of 2024, I actually launched an online course where people can learn to start their own bookkeeping businesses. And it took off like crazy. So by August 2025, we had over 3,500 people that had gone through the course. And, maybe that's not a lot. To me, it felt like a lot. It felt like, it felt like I had really kind of had an effect on people, made some changes. I mean, there were, stay-at-home moms that their kids were old enough to be in school, but the mom or the dad still wanted to do something, but have that flexibility. And, I just see bookkeeping as bookkeeping is the solution. I mean, you tell me a problem and I can tell you kind of how bookkeeping can be that solution. I mean, our company has allowed us to God, it's allowed us to take some amazing vacations. It's allowed my husband and I to work literally together every day, which is awesome for us. It may not be awesome for everybody, but it works very well for us. It's allowed us, private school for our youngest and, the larger expenses that come up for older children. I'll say that anybody who has children that are adults, they understand that the price tag is larger when they're adults. But it's just given us this amazing life and this amazing flexibility. And to be able to share that with other people, I didn't think I would be so inspired to do that, but that's kind of the new path that I'm on. So
that's lovely. Well, that's great. And I'm glad we were able to inspire you in your journey.
You did.
Yes. That's a great way for us to start, is kind of what you've been up to since your last appearance. But one thing that we want to talk about today, which was actually you acquire other bookkeeping firms in this whole mix. And I'd love to hear how that feeds into the training and how you acquire. Doesn't seem like it's your whole business, but it's part of your growth strategy. And is this something that our listener could be thinking about? Was it successful? How does that fit into your business today?
When we first started the first bookkeeping business that we purchased, we knocked it out of the park. It was awesome. It just worked out so well. And of course, then we thought, oh, we've got this. This is going to be a breeze. And then the second one we acquired, it was, we had a lot of challenges along the way. We had the bookkeeper who had, initially said that she wanted to retire. She then decided she didn't want to retire. She didn't want to give up her bookkeeping business. And it kind of became a little bit of a back and forth of, we wanted to keep it as nice and kind as possible, but at what point do you put your foot down type of a thing? So we definitely have our benchmarks of what we look for. But really what started it was that as a bookkeeper, you're out there, you're talking to people, you're asking whatever your questions are that you're asking. Maybe your strategy for gaining clients is to get referrals from tax professionals, because that is an excellent strategy to use. And I mean, that can fill up your book of business pretty quickly. So you talk to that tax professional, and that tax professional will be the first to tell you that it is really difficult to find a good bookkeeper. And then they, if you dig a little bit deeper, that tax professional then goes on to tell you, well, I was working with this person for a while and referred, 50 clients to her. And as, a bookkeeper sitting there who's just hoping for maybe your first or second or third client, you're like, 50 clients that this person referred, that's crazy. And then you hear the story a little bit longer and it's, and then she just closed her doors and went out of business. And so what we started to hear more and more often was that there were bookkeepers who had successful, thriving practices, and then they just decided to retire. And they just closed their doors. They sent, a letter to their clients saying, hey, good luck. We're retiring. We're moving off to Florida or wherever it is. And to me, it seemed like there was the potential for an opportunity. Now, the challenge, of course, is always to get in front of somebody before they decide to pull the plug and tell all of their clients, we're closed for business. But it's been a very interesting strategy for us. I think, with the purchase, we've purchased a lot of businesses during our marriage. My husband and I have been into a whole bunch of different industries, and mostly started by me because I, decide one day it would be fun to own a laundromat or whatever it is. Not fun to own a laundromat, by the way. We made a lot of money, but not fun to own a laundromat. A lot of work.
Yes.
You really need to know what your parameters are, right? So if your parameters are that you are willing to get a business loan, then figure out how much that business loan is that you're willing to invest. If your parameters are you have X amount in savings and you want to use your savings, but know what your parameters are and really vet the financials of the bookkeeper who's selling the business. To be able to make sure that what they're stating is actually true. You know,
Yeah.
you need to dig a little bit deeper than a tax return. I'll usually ask for bank statements to go along with the tax returns just to make sure that the income lines up. Unfortunately,
It's a
there's
tricky
a
one
lot.
because you could be the lines, all of it could just seem like it's all great, but then whatever there's the clients, and that's the challenge with any kind of acquisition where it's a service business is, are those people going to stay? Are they happy? Are they, do they love the owner and they'll just leave if the owner leaves? So many challenges there that you could be buying not what you think you're buying.
Right. So we look at, is the business still profitable if you only retain 70% of their business? That's our benchmark. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of businesses that don't, I'll use the water test, right? That's what we call it. There's a lot of businesses that don't make that they just don't hit the water test. If it's a bookkeeper who I actually talked to somebody yesterday, and she's deciding that she wants to not move to Florida, but she wants to retire, and her husband's been retired for a few years, and she only does about $3,000 a month in her business. Well, it's not worth it to me because she's really only dealing with maybe 7 clients on a regular basis. And that means that's a lot of work to go through to lose, at least I can guarantee I'll lose at least 2 of those clients. So 5 clients, is it really worth it for the back and forth? And no, at the end of the day, it's not. So we look at a minimum client roster. We'll look at the types of clients because there's, maybe certain clients that we just don't enjoy working with, or don't have team members that are trained to work with. So that wouldn't be a good fit for us. But we've just got kind of a checklist, kind of the same thing that somebody would do if they were flipping houses, right? Like, your parameters, what works for you. And as long as you stick with that, you'll do well.
Flipping houses, the stock market, going to the casino. If you stick to your system, you're probably going to be okay. But people don't typically stick to their systems, and that's where it goes wrong.
Well, and I'll see, and it's really funny because my husband will often, but they were so nice. Yeah, nice has nothing to do with it. Like, I really don't want to be in negotiations with somebody who's, very difficult to work with, but it doesn't matter how nice the person is. We had a deal last month that was supposed to go through, and we had, for whatever reason, forgotten to ask what accounting system they used for their clients. Like, should have been our first question. And we work exclusively within QuickBooks Online, and their clients were mixed. So that's a pretty high risk. Are we going to be able to convert clients who, are in love with using Xero over to QuickBooks Online? Maybe, but if I use the 70% rule, the client roster whittles down, more and more. So
what about for people who are thinking about selling their business? What could they be doing in their business that would make it more attractive to you? Like what are some of the levers that make it, a lot of people are maybe thinking about that. And if they were going to improve it, what would you say the areas where they should be thinking about improvement?
The first thing, ensure that you have a contract with all of your clients. There's a lot of bookkeepers that still do things off of, a handshake and I'll send you an invoice for work. So we look for contracts with all clients. It's just good business practice. That would be the first thing. The second thing would be, it doesn't necessarily matter if you have a specific industry. If you have a niche or a niche, however you say it, I switch it up all the time and it drives my kids crazy. But if you have a specialty, that's fine. But how specialized you are means that whoever is purchasing your book of business is going to have to be that specialized as well. So if you're somebody who does, just medical billing, you're probably going to have a practice that's a little bit more difficult to sell than for somebody who's doing kind of a mixed bag of things. So contracts would be the first thing. What kind of interaction do you have with your clients? Are you just doing reconciliations every month and you never talk to your clients? Ironically, the bookkeepers that really have very little interaction with their clients, that becomes an easier acquisition because they're not super attached. But that's a terrible business practice, right? So are
Yeah, good one
you
to buy, but
good one
bad
to
one
buy?
to do because it's they could, if they're willing to be bought, they're willing to leave. You know?
Exactly. Easy come, easy go. So
Yeah.
we really look for something in the middle of what is your interaction with the clients? Are you able to have a conversation with them where you're making the introduction? And we kind of will see how that conversation goes. And really the 70% is true. We've found that when we've looked at our last 10 that we've purchased, that 70% of the clients stay. It's usually not much less than that, but it's generally not more than that. So the big thing I'll go back to is clients. Then my second thing is what kind of client interaction do you have? And I would say my third thing is software. So does the software that they're using line up for the software that we use? We are, we're Intuit snobs, I guess you could say. I've, been using QuickBooks since 2004. And, when it was desktop and really I'm comfortable in it. I'm comfortable to train in it. And my team is comfortable to train in it and comfortable to work in it as well. So they can interact with clients to answer questions. Are you a bookkeeper who's willing to kind of take clients wherever they're at? Meaning, if you have one in Xero, that's fine with you. If you have one in QuickBooks Online, that's fine with you. If you have one that wants to use a spreadsheet, that's fine with you. That is one where we will look at that and we'll know that it's probably not going to be a good fit for us because they're clients who have gotten used to doing whatever they want. And for us to try and put rules or parameters on them probably will be a no, it's just not a win. So those are kind of our top three things. And then there's, some other little things that go from there. But the big thing is the contract. If you're a bookkeeper out there, you should have a contract. And I actually recommend that you have a form of payment on file. I think it's a huge mistake to wait and invoice your clients. And wait for them to pay. I think that you're going to just go broke really quickly. So
much energy goes into collecting money, and if you can get it up front, it's it's kind of pay first, get the services later. And any business that does that typically does better. Like they don't have to burn energy trying to get the money after they've done the work. Like landscapers, and you see these businesses, they'll, oh yeah, we're going to do your yard, and not a lick of money gets exchanged until the end. Like how risky is that?
Yeah.
For both parties, right? It's like you don't want to pay everything as a homeowner. You don't want to pay everything up front, but as a business owner, it's like, let's get some money on the table here. And I think in a service business like bookkeeping, it's just a natural place to say, you know what, you pay me this amount at the beginning of the month, and then then I've got my money and I do your work, and all that's so much cleaner. So that's a good one, and I think that's goes along with the contract, which is really clarity for everybody.
Yep.
I would say it's you have a contract, but it's all like, how do we get paid? And that's just good business practice. It's like, this is how it's going to work. This is what you can expect. The other question I had, though, was around pricing. It's always a conversation we're having. Price better, do this, value pricing. I mean, there's a million different directions, things we could talk about with pricing. But when you're selling a business, I imagine you're evaluating, what are your margins like? Are you pricing well? How do you approach that?
Well, margins are interesting, right? Because our firm is completely remote. So I'm in Sacramento. I have team members that are sprinkled across the United States. We have some in South Carolina. We have some in California. We have some in Montana. We have one in Alaska. Like we're across the United States. And so, if you're looking at overhead for a firm that, let's say, is based in California, let's say I'm looking at one that's based in California. Well, their overhead, if they're paying rent, if they're on, if they have payroll, if whatever their expenses are, there is a high probability that my expenses wouldn't be the same. I'm not going to have that $5,000 a month lease. I'm not going to have, payroll that maybe is as high, or maybe my payroll would be higher because they operate everything themselves and they're running it themselves. So I take expenses with a little bit of a grain of salt. I'll compare their expenses with what our budget is and with what I know our capacity is to take on additional clients. And so expenses are interesting, but I think the mistake that I've seen business owners who are trying to acquire other businesses make is that they take what the seller is saying on their financials as like it's gospel. And they're afraid, I think, to push back a little bit or to dig into those numbers. And we're numbers people. Like this is our jam. So ask for proof of those deposits. Make sure that, I've had sellers where I've said, okay, thank you for the financials for the last 2 years. I would like to see the proof of the deposits for the last 2 years because something just didn't quite seem right. Or let me see a breakdown of payroll, or, what is your lease agreement? Because I would say that's the other piece to be aware of is if they're in a lease and you purchase, you may be responsible for the remainder of the lease. So we always make sure we have a clause in our agreements that we're not responsible for any debts of the business and that the lease is terminated when the sale takes place.
Got it. So you're working to just buy clients,
correct,
and keep it clean.
Correct.
And it's interesting as well from the perspective of the industry that we're in and who our listener is and what they do. I mean, you would think about it, it's if people haven't thought, like anybody that's buying and selling businesses, having a great bookkeeper on your side to do that scrutinizing is perfect, right? So if a bookkeeper is thinking of buying a business, you're really in a great position to do that kind of scrutiny. You're like, give us the details. Let's get down to the black. Let's get down to the white and know exactly what's under the stacks here, because that's what gives you clarity. And then you can make better business decisions, which is the whole point of the industry, is to help business owners make better decisions, have, information that drives their business instead of being in the dark with the finances. Right. So I would imagine there's a whole lot of business transactions, buying and selling of businesses, where had they only had a great bookkeeper, they would have, ended up in a better position.
That's for sure.
Yeah. It's an interesting take, and just another thought that I had when you were talking. It's like, it's not only for a bookkeeper evaluating another potential business that they might want to acquire, but it's like if there's businesses or clients that they have that are thinking about selling or thinking about buying, it's a great way to say, look, we can help you get to better numbers here.
Right. And so if you are looking at it, and we always start negotiations, not necessarily what the seller is asking for, because just like with home sales, sometimes people are unrealistic in their expectations. This is, and sometimes I've had conversations on the flip side where people are like, oh, I don't know what it's worth. Okay, so here's where we're going to start. So we start at a 1.25 multiplier of their receivables, and then we go from there. Because really, as you talked about, all we care about is the client base. I don't want anybody's old computers. I don't want their office equipment. Those are not things that are of value to me. And so that may make us not a good fit for the acquisition. And if you're somebody who is out there who is thinking about, selling your business, maybe look at your competitors. Who are the people that are servicing your clients? And I would start the conversation with those people. I have found that bookkeepers and accountants are a really friendly bunch. We're really willing to share information. There's not a lot of unscrupulous people in our industry. And so I would start there with who else is serving your clientele, and you might be able to make some money from your business.
Yeah, no, that's pretty exciting. And I think it's probably opening up a lot of questions and ideas and inspiration for our listener on what's possible either for them to sell it or also this strategy of growing your business through acquisition. I think it's undervalued route and takes a bit of thinking and working out. The other piece of this is, okay, you've bought them now, integrating them in. What have been some of the big learnings around the integration of those clients into your business?
So this is going to sound
learnings. Yeah.
Right. So here's the big learning curve. So the first bookkeeping business that we purchased, the owner, they were older. His wife was facing some health issues. He wanted to just walk away. And I believe that is what made the transition go so smoothly. He notified all of his clients. He didn't get into details, but he said, due to health reasons, I need to focus on my family, and this is the company that will be taking care of you. It was simple. It was straightforward. And it really was what made it so simple and straightforward. When we have bookkeepers that want to kind of hold on, sometimes you end up with the problem that they don't really want to let go. And so we generally will not have the owners stay on. In fact, I can only think of 2 situations where we've had the owners stay on. And I will say I regretted it both of those times.
Okay. It makes sense.
Maybe I don't play well with others and that.
No, I don't think that's it. I think you're taking a business in many regards as a person's child. Right.
Yes.
And so there's going to be a lot of it. It's like, hey, I want to leave, but you're still my child. And it's like an owner would have all sorts of ways of doing things and thinking about things. And if you keep them on, they're going to be like, well, we're going to do it my way, right? No. We're doing it a whole new way. Oh, I don't like that new way. Right. So I've seen it happen in other businesses. And we sold a bistro that we owned, Family Bistro, and my mother was the kingpin there. And when she sold it, she had all sorts of systems, and we were big E-Myth people then, and it's like systems, and this is how we do things. And when she sold the business, she really wanted to educate and teach and train the new business owner around how things work there. Now, and I think in that situation, it's actually probably not a bad idea, because you would think about you're selling the whole package. People coming in, they're buying a sandwich, they're buying a drink, they're kind of expecting it to go a certain way. But the new owner was like, I think I'm good, And she was like, oh, okay, so I'm off. Well, the business didn't last very long. It was a very successful business, and they kind of ran it into the ground. But I could imagine from that person's perspective, having my mom tell him or her how to do things would have been very annoying. And they're a business owner themselves. They're coming in. They've got visions and expectations where they want to take things, just like you do in your business. You have a certain way of doing it. It would be really detrimental to have that owner, to have my mom, in some regard, very detrimental to the culture of the new business.
Yep.
So it's a great learning. I love that one. And I don't think we've ever really tackled that on the show or just really thought about it. I think that's a real big one. What other things did you get bitten by?
The biggest one was one of those people that seemed very, very nice. And it turned out he was selling his business because he knew that he had quite a few clients that were not pleased with him, that were not pleased with his services. And we honestly, I have some younger people. I'm 48. I'm not embarrassed to be 48. I definitely have younger people on my staff, and they're like, one of my girls on my team, she said, I checked out this guy on social media, and there's a lot of people that are really angry with him. And so we actually ended up backing out of that deal, because what we were looking at was it would have been an uphill battle with, his 60 clients to prove to them that we were, not going to do the things he had done, or, we would have had to try so much harder than was necessary, because he had unfortunately left, a bad taste in their mouths.
That's a good one. Yeah. And it's that did pop up in my mind around, the retention rate could go way higher or lower depending on some of the client satisfaction levels. But the other thing too is you're buying these other clients, and inside those clients there could be what often are called PITA clients, the pain in the ass clients. And so it's like you kind of get these like little, I forget what they call them, strawberries in the code world or game world, where you're playing a game and this little, like, you unlock this hidden feature that nobody sees unless they go and, throw a rock over a fence. I don't even know how it works, but I think they're called strawberries or raspberries or something like that. But you got the pita berries that you might find.
Those pita surprises. Now, I will tell you the one thing that I have learned is that if you look at the personality of the person selling the business, their clients will mirror their personality. It's very interesting. I'm sure that there's psychologists out there that could, explain it better than I can.
That. Yes.
But you really have to be aware of that. And so if you are going into negotiations, I'm not saying you have to date this person. You don't have to move them into your house, but you should take some time to get to know them. My husband says we get to know them socially, but really get to know them socially. Find out, are they a good person? Like, we're just good people. We're nice, good, honest people. And we like nice, good, honest people. So if you have that person who's maybe a little bit unscrupulous, or maybe just doesn't genuinely care about their clients, you're going to have clients that are the easy come, easy go clients, where you'll spend your $100,000 or whatever it is to acquire this business. And then you have these clients that you just don't want to work with. And so really then what are you left with? So
it's very good advice. And that is the key. It's not a high volume thing that you're doing. You take your time and really get to know them, get to really vet their business and buy from people that you like and trust, and you're likely to be more successful with that avenue. Really interesting perspective, and I think a really great opportunity for those that are ready and in their business to take this on. Would there be anything around that where it's like, hey, someone's listening right now, they're thinking, this is great, I could handle another 20, 30, 40 clients into my business. What makes that a bad idea for a bookkeeping firm to take this strategy?
Well, be honest. Do you really have the capacity to take on, to double your business size? Do you really have the capacity to deal with the learning curve? Because it's about a 2-month learning curve with new clients. Do you really have the capacity to take on a learning curve with all of those clients? What does that look like for you? Anytime we have an acquisition, we'll usually bring on 3 additional team members just to provide that additional support. I have an admin that retired. She actually went back to teaching full time, and I will bring her in because she's just the client whisperer, and she will have that call with them to, introduce us as a firm, ask if, what questions they have. But she'll also ask the question that nobody really wants to ask of, what did your previous bookkeeper do that you didn't like? What really bugged you? And she is able to get that information. And so then we kind of know, we know what to steer clear of. And we also know if it's something that we do. So we've had clients, I don't want to be contacted. Well, we have to. We have to ask you questions. There are going to be things that we just don't know the answers to. So is it reasonable if we contact you once a month? And, she'll kind of find a good meeting, in the middle. One thing, though, that I forgot to mention before that is a big thing that we do look for is how much money a bookkeeper is pulling out of their business. So if there are, it just can reflect on their financials, and it can be a positive or it can be a negative. But if you have a bookkeeper that's, bleeding their business financially every month, then we need to figure out the reason why for it. Were they hoping that they would hit this big ticket client and it never happened? Did they have a plan to grow? So we will look at the bigger picture of things.
Makes sense.
But, I do have a formula. I'd be happy to share it with anybody if they want to reach out to me. You can share my email in the show notes, and they can reach out to me. Happy to share the formula. Happy to share, kind of what we look for, our checklist when we're looking at purchasing businesses. We do stay away from brokers, not for any reason other than it kind of inflates the price generally by about 20%.
Yeah, you've kind of figured out you're your own broker, and that's I think the real opportunity, and that's a great offer for our listener if they either want to sell or acquire with this strategy. Then you'd be a great person to reach out to, and we'll have a link to your a link to your website in the show notes. But a broker just brings in, for some people that might be a great strategy if they don't want to go down that route. But you've figured this out. This is in a way, you already are a broker. You're your own broker.
We are. And we found really that the only benefit, and we found this from the laundromats, that the only benefit that the broker really brought to the table was the matching of the two. And then after that, there's not much more that they do. So we have our business attorney looks over the purchase contract, and then that's it. And it ends up saving a lot of money for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big chunk. I can imagine. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic, Melissa. I absolutely love the conversation, and you are definitely someone who knows the business, been doing it a while, and it's just a pleasure for you to come on and be generous with your learnings and sharing to our listeners. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.